you're given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe in a business. Not because they want to do it, just because they heard it pays. And who the fuck wants to be poor knowing that's how we've been raised? Society is getting heavy, I can feel the weight. The pressure of success is like 100 million pounds of shit.
How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. Today's going to be a great topic. It actually is a request that came my way through Facebook. The request is, when is it a good time to make that decision to move up? And again, there's a lot of factors in here, so I'm going to bring in a panel to have that discussion. This also, guys, is the first time we actually have a live studio audience. So we actually have people that are in this Zoom conference call with us, because what we did was a few hours ago, we announced that we're going to do a quick live show to test this out. And we distributed the room number and the password, which allowed some people entrance in here, which will be great because towards the end, we could do a Q&A, and they are professionals themselves. So this is a great way to be constructive with the dialogue. Trust me, guys, through questions from these experienced professionals, the dialogue is probably going to be a lot higher than it ever was before. So obviously, I want to thank the professionals who took time out of their busy day to join in on the show. Now, I have three people on the panel, including four people on the panel, including myself. So let me first introduce Russ Hamilton. Russ, how's the Facebook page, Keepers of Chaos, going? And tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. Had to figure out that mute thing for a second there. Hey, Keepers of Chaos is doing fantastic. We're coming up on 5,000 members. The driving force, the idea behind Keepers of Chaos, of course, is professionalism and just, expanding that concept to all of corrections and wanting to, have people come there for the content, for the camaraderie, for the training, for the knowledge, everything that I have to give, everything that my moderators and admins have to give, and everything that all of the members there have to give. And just for a little bit about myself, I have 27 years with California Department of Corrections, and then I have some additional years in juvenile corrections and some additional years in rehabilitation. So that's where my lineage is.
And guys, just a heads up, the Keepers of Chaos Facebook page is pushing, I think, close to 5,000. He has a mentorship program there. So if you guys are interested, you could meet up with Russ. I guess you would do it through a message, and then he could see if you guys qualify for that mentorship. It's pretty cool. I see the profiles of the different employees, and then you're opened up to helping those that are entering the field that may need to have a mentor. So I think that's a pretty amazing thing that you offer there. And I didn't see my name on it. Just realized that. Unless it's always down at the bottom.
You have to volunteer. You have to step forward. You look to the right, you look to the left, and then you have everyone behind you step back.
I'm used to being voluntold. That's what I'm used to being voluntold what to do. Hey, Will, man, I got guys, good friend of mine, Will Young, very busy gentleman, has multiple podcasts, 10-9. He also has the Saturday Night Synopsis going. He has a YouTube channel called Just Corrections. He's the author of a book called When Home Becomes a House Unit. Has another book coming out, which I know we're expecting for it to hit the markets first week of December, I believe, but he'll tell you more. But Will, thanks for coming on. Great advocate, guys, for the mental health and well-being of our frontline professionals. But Will, hey, you mind introducing yourself and give us some updates on what you got going on?
Thanks, Anthony. Thanks for having me on. I was, sitting on my couch doing absolutely nothing tonight, and I was feeling lonely, lost, and then you texted me, and I said, "This is great. This is exactly what I needed tonight." But I'm William Young. I've got 16 years correctional experience in a county jail, and for a lot of that's been with programming, reentry, and a few years ago, I got into the mental health side of it, promoting, advocating for the mental health and well-being of correctional officers. There's a lot of stuff out there I noticed for our population, but nothing for us. We're just walking around all crazy and everything. So I started writing articles. I wrote a book. I have a book, Anthony mentioned, When Home Becomes a Housing Unit. My second book, The Nothing That Never Happened, will out December 13th. Both of those will be available on Amazon. And then because of the pandemic, shut down a bunch of speaking engagements that I had planned for 2020. I started getting on Facebook and started podcasting. And so I have a couple of different podcasts, a Saturday Night Synopsis that focuses on, it's a gay cast, I had people come on, they talk about their dealings and bouts with PTSD, anxiety, depression, and how we've pushed past that. And then I also have a 10-9 podcast called the 10-9 podcast, which is me and my buddy Roland Peters. And it is just two salty old veterans talking crap to each other and trading some anecdotes, some stories about how we're trying to maintain our sanity and civility outside of the facility. So, yeah, so I got a couple things in the air.
Yeah, no, I'm interested in coming on your podcast, but I have to wait till I retire. I've heard the dialogue, and I want to make sure I'm not connected to any department. But I just want to tell you something. William's book really does get to a lot of people. I get messaged all the time about William's book, and the great thing is the people that message me, if they want to connect to Will, all I do is give them the information, and Will gets right back to him, and the person connects right back to me and says, "Hey, Gange, thank you for doing that. I was really down in the dumps, and this person just knew exactly how to talk to me, how to pick me up." And again, that's just a gift that obviously you can relate to, and just definitely just you're doing really well. I appreciate what you do on your own time as well, not even just for the profession, but also on your own time. So bravo, you're saving lives, Will. You're saving lives.
Thanks, brother.
Yeah, it's the truth. And Dave Smith. Okay, so real quick about David Smith. David Smith has a YouTube channel called Correctional Officer Lifestyle. I love it. You can actually see that the channel is evolving. And the reason what really made me want to come on is he started doing these episodes on these 10 things about corrections. It's like these rocks or these stones. He'll explain it better, but they're just very powerful, very important nuggets. And then I really got to understand who this gentleman is and how informative his channel is. And then just overall, just this guy, he comes home, gets to these videos to make sure that the right information gets out there. And it's just an honor to have him. I called him last minute today, and, he was willing to come on the show. So thanks, David Smith. You mind introducing yourself to our audience?
I'm David Smith, founder of Correctional Officer Lifestyle YouTube channel. And what Anthony's talking about is the 10 big rocks of the Department of Corrections. I'm sure Officer C knows all about the 10 big rocks of the Department of Corrections. I've got 8 of them up. I'm working on my last 2 videos. I want to make sure, like Anthony mentioned, I get the right information out there so that I can be helpful to the men and women of the profession. And that's the biggest thing. I want to take care of the people that are doing the job that I do. I am a veteran of 26 and a half years, and I'm looking forward to the topic today. Sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun.
I will say one thing, Dave, if I may. You said you were founder of the Correctional Officer Lifestyle channel, but you weren't the founder of the unmute button. I just want to put it out there. And I muted you before I said that, just to make sure it was safe to say that. There you go. So Will's always prepared. He's got to unmute the mic. So guys, we come back. We're going to dive right into the topic. I know it took us a second, but I wanted to introduce the professionals. And then we'll have a little bit of a Q&A right afterwards. We've got some other professionals here that will join in on the discussion. And, as always, guys, the show is Tier Talk. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. We're going to go to our sponsor. And when we come back, we're going to be discussing, when it's the right time to make rank.
I wanted to attend a university that had an intelligence program. I wanted to look at problems different. I wanted to increase my critical thinking abilities. AMU offered those avenues to expand. Obtaining your degree as an adult, you're actually paying yourself and investing in yourself. You can't put a dollar on it, it's priceless. It's something that can never be taken away from you.
American Military University. Learn from the leader.
Guys, inmate manipulation is a course that is highly needed. It's the process that's so slow moving and subtle that you don't realize it's happening. When inmates choose to manipulate, they manipulate our need to react. Situational awareness and insight is going to save your career. It's going to save you from doing foolish things. Listen to your gut. So the more insight we have, the more we can recognize what isn't so overt, and we can correct our behavior before we fall into a trap that we can't get out of. If you allow an inmate to pull you out of your prescribed role, you are opening up a door for a host of problems.
Inmate manipulation, the psychology behind inmate manipulation. Available now. Link in description. All right, then we're back. So this topic is actually very subjective. So I think what's going to happen here is that we're all going to kind of give you what we feel may help you make that decision. But at the end of the day, you're going to have to know it in yourself. I mean, that's the key here. But one of the things I wanted to talk about first is quality over quantity. So one of the concerns that we have is when people ask me, hey, Gangi, when is it the right time to make rank? They quickly go into an amount of time. Like, do you need 5 years in? Do you need 10 years in? Do you need 15 years in? And I want to tell you something right now, and then I'm going to have Will complement this thought, because I think Will knows where I'm going with this. It's not about the amount of time that you have in. It's about the quality of time that you've spent in the profession. And real quick, you have some facilities that are very active and some facilities that are not that active. For people that work in those active facilities that are grinding away every day and just really learning the job because they have to, because at every day that are reacting to something, their experience may be a lot in just 3 to 4 years. And maybe they're ready to take that next level because they're able to show that they're able to step up, adapt and adjust and really, take control of the situation, where you could have other people that have 10, 15 years in that work in a facility that's not as active. And just, even though they have 10 or 15 years in, it doesn't mean that they're ready for a leadership position because they haven't been faced with the challenges that come from, working at a busier facility and then obviously taking the responsibility of other people's work, because that's another thing when you become a supervisor, which we'll explore. But hey, William, if I said, hey, how much time does it take to become a good supervisor when you want to become a good supervisor, how would you answer that?
Well, the turnover is so high in some facilities, it's just a couple of weeks, right? You're there and you're a sergeant, right? Because everybody else is gone. No, here's the thing, and you're right. It isn't, and this is the big grumbling from veteran staff, right? Because when a newer person or person with less time gets a promotion or gets maybe a special detail position, you always hear the officers grumble, right? Oh, I can't. This person, you got boots that are older than this person. But here's the thing: in this profession, we need people that are motivated, that have a willingness to learn. These new people that are coming in are go-getters. They want to learn everything. They're motivated to do it. And so you could have a 16, 17, 20-year veteran sitting in a housing unit, sitting in, their position. They've been there. They've never tried to move. They've never wanted to do anything else. And then you got a person who's been there 2, 3, 4 years, who is working every position they can work. They're doing extra projects. They're trying everything they can do to educate themselves. Who do you want that person, leading? Obviously, this person that's been here 20 years has some experience, and they have some stories, and they have know-how, and you have to rely on that person. But you have to wonder why they never really showed the initiative and wanted to do anything else. And so you can't just say, hey, look, I've been here longer, so I deserve the promotion over somebody who hasn't, because the trend now, especially in my experience, is, and I had a guy come to me at my facility, and he says, hey, Bill, I need to help with some of the things that you're doing. And it's a guy who's never showed interest before. And I said, well, why? Why now? What's going on? I'd love to have you help. But he said, because in my interview that I had for my promotion for my sergeant, they asked me, what have I done in my career to help better the facility? And he didn't have an answer, because all he's done is show up for work, go home, show up for work, go home, the bare minimum. Right? When you have all these other people that are trying to bring in new training modules, that are trying to bring in new equipment, that are, like you said, working in admissions department or working segregation and collecting that knowledge so they can be more useful for the staff. So for me, it has nothing to do with how long that you've been in the facility. It's what you've done and what you're willing to do to help the facility and help the people.
Right. And also a great thing is to ask yourself, why do you want to become that supervisor? When I started crossing into the sergeant's position, my last days as an officer, when people are asking me, hey, why do you want to become a supervisor? The first things that come to your mind automatically, is the money, the external incentives. And the concern here with that is that's not enough to motivate you through the bullshit that you're going to have to deal with when you become a supervisor. So like, if that's your incentive, that's the reason why. Those are external incentives. You need incentives that are internal, like maybe somehow trying to go to where you can create an impact. That's great. Because even as a frontline supervisor, you may not be able to, pioneer changes, but you can pioneer how people can accept the changes that are coming. You could be that facilitator that boosts morale through the negativity of this ever-changing corrections. But one of the things that someone asked me was, hey, Gangi, are you willing to take responsibility of other people's work? Now, to me, that superseded the money. That superseded the power of authority. Was I willing to take the responsibility of other people's work? And that's when you sit back and you're thinking like, wow, am I ready to be that supervisor now? Because again, I barely want to take responsibility of my work sometimes. Now I got to take the responsibility of, the people that are going to be beneath me, especially when you have those cell extractions. But hey, Russ, when you became a supervisor, right, was that one of the concerns that you had? I mean, did you really, it wasn't about the money for you, right? It was about either making some type of change and facilitating the changes at the facility, or maybe, willing to step up and take that responsibility as a leader. And what does that responsibility mean?
I think that the real driving force for me is that I was at a point where I had a level of frustration with those that were basically supervising me, where I felt that my talents, my abilities, my skill sets could at that point be better used to impact the safety and security of the institution in a much more profound way than I did at a more individual level. And there was a part of me that really did not want to promote, because I enjoyed very much what I was doing, and I was an impact player, and I was doing things every day that I felt did make a difference. But I just saw that there was going to be a need at some point to try and pass some of that on. And that was, for me, what I tend to refer to as the readiness. I was ready at that point to take on something new, take on something challenging, and try and prove to myself that my thoughts and my ideas would really, truly impact in a better way by being able to, teach those staff, by being able to have them do what I thought was better ways of doing things. And I just really had a distaste too for a lot of the motivators. You can't take everything out of the equation, but when you look at it, you have to have that readiness, and that readiness has to be, based on a foundation of experience. It has to be based on a foundation of skill sets. It has to be based on a foundation of being able to work with people and to be able to supervise them, in a manner where you can really urge them beyond what their current abilities are. And so I felt that for me, that was the primary thing, was that readiness. But I see all these other people, they're looking at the money. Well, you know what? The money's fine. You shouldn't take that out of the thing, but sometimes that's the only driver. And then you start looking at the power orientation. And yeah, they just want there because of the money or because of the power, or maybe it's because they're simply bored, or maybe it's just that, they're burnt out, and so they have to move on to something else. So those reasons are poor reasons, because, you're not trying to think about what the best possible thing is for your department, for your particular facility. And so I think that, just the readiness and the willing to get in there and try and be that supervisor that's going to try and improve things for everybody is the one key thing that you should be looking toward, especially not the power orientation thing. That one's horrible.
Yeah, what's funny, Russ, actually you touched on something. I was actually kind of got bored as an officer at one point, and that was a motivation that I quickly pushed aside, because you're right. That cannot be that's not the right motivation. I'm not moving up because I'm bored now with the position I'm in, or there's certain people I didn't want to be my boss. Once I start becoming, I got 8 years in, and I start seeing these rookies getting promoted and they only have 3 years in. I'm like, I better move up, man, because I just trained this person. But again, still not the right reason to move up. The right reason I think to move up is, to really try to have that impact on that front line. Again, the impact, as I mentioned before, is not, it's not, people always think about, I got to create change. You're limited in doing that. That's not what I mean. The impact comes from how you treat that front line. A supervisor that gets remembered is a supervisor that cares and leads. I mean, that's it. Those are the supervisors that have an impact, because when they leave, you feel the void. You feel it. You know, you have these other supervisors that just, they kind of supervise. When they go, anybody can replace them. You know, but when, let's say, Sergeant Russ Hamilton left, we missed him because Sergeant Russ Hamilton may just come in every day and say, hey, how's your day going? You know, or come in and give some coffee to the guys. You know, I mean, little things that show that you care and that you're an official leader is what's hard to replace. And let me ask you something, Dave. There are some qualities here that you just have to become a supervisor to learn. You know, it's certain qualities that, you know what, you don't realize is needed until you step into that position. You know, what were some of the qualities that, again, as you started moving up, kind of developed you into that position?
Well, it's kind of interesting. The qualities that I needed to develop were empathy towards my staff and making sure that I take care of my staff within the means of my authority to do so. It was really a hard transition to go from being the sergeant on the ground that's always called to every single thing that happens on the compound. Don't know if anybody knows this. I'm 6 foot at 340. I was always called to everything that happened, to being the guy that's calling to folks. And that was a quality that I had to develop, as the ability to trust people to do what I used to do. That was a very hard thing for me to develop, but just learning how to take care of your staff. That's the biggest quality that I think a supervisor needs to develop, is that taking care of their staff.
You know, you mentioned something that's key when it comes to getting promoted. You mentioned multiple ranks. You know, I think that obviously entering into that frontline supervisor role is the first time where you have to take that responsibility. And most of the time, the frontline supervisors, they should be really tight-knit with their subordinates, because you're in it together. You know, as you start moving up to those administrative levels, I would say lieutenant up, depending on what the rank is, that's where it becomes a bigger jump. It becomes a little bit different, because you may not be as involved in the grunt work. You know, now you're kind of the step above, kind of overseeing it. So I'll start with Dave first, and we'll work our way around back. But, you know, was there a difference for you jumping from a frontline supervisor to the administrative level, like, as you know, as a lieutenant, as a captain, that, you know, basically was a tougher transition? Or was the officer to frontline supervisor a tougher transition?
Oh, definitely. What we refer to in the Florida department is putting on the white shirt. Putting on the white shirt was definitely the hardest transition that I went through. And it's almost like when you take that step up, you have to take a step back, because you have to let the people that work for you work. And transitioning from being the one that's called to do everything to calling people to do the stuff that you need to get done, that was by far the hardest transition that I made.
And hey, Russ, I got to ask you this question, Russ. You know, when I was a rookie and I came right into this profession, right, I used to think that the supervisors were gods, that they could do anything. You know, and it's true, because when you're new in this profession, you know, you look at like the sergeant as, man, they're the man that can make a difference, or they're the woman that can make a difference. And then you finally jump into the position and you start to realize, oh, their power is sort of limited. It's not as infinite as I thought it was. How did you view supervisors, you know, as a rookie? And then when you finally became one, was it different?
You know, I had a tremendous amount of respect for most of my supervisors. Some of my supervisors I didn't have that much for. I've got to say that. But some of the ones that I really revered, yeah, to me, they were the ones I wanted to emulate. They were the ones I wanted to be like. They were the ones that taught me, you know, a lot of the talents that I managed to harness as both an officer and a supervisor. So yeah, and you know, it wasn't just supervisors. Those, you know, other officers that were able to do some pretty amazing things in my mind. So I think that what really matters is not necessarily what your rank is, but how big of a role you're able to fulfill. there's officers out there that, they just do the minimum possible, and they try and apply for that job that's, weekends off as soon as they can. And they never bother to try and make themselves better through training, or just, biting off as much as you can, and, trying to fulfill whatever the maximum is that your state or, your local government allows you to fulfill as an officer. And so what I saw right away is that I could step into those shoes, and, I'm willing to attack anything from every angle that I can to be the best supervisor I can be, but, more than that, to be the best correctional professional that I can be, in order to be out there to be, stopping crimes, stopping security breaches, making things safer for everyone. So it's really a matter of how much heart you have to go in there and take on as big a mantle as you can manage. And so I think when you go out there and you take on these bigger mantles, you get recognized for that. And those are the people that you often admire and you see as the gods and stuff, but it doesn't really matter what's on their collar. It really matters what's on their heart.
That's powerful. What's funny is we talk about trust. It's funny how you get some subordinates that, they're not the best when they're officers, let's just say that. But then when they go ahead and they try to achieve rank, they try to do a paradigm shift. But the concern is going to be is that the people that you're now supervising know who you were. So now when you go to try to confront them with things that you used to do, it's like, really? Like, you're confronting me on this when you did this stuff all the time. And all I'm going to say is that you're planning on making this a career and you're planning on moving up. Don't have those shadows in the closet, because at the end of the day, those shadows will come out at any time. But I've noticed people that they took the job as soon as they came in, as serious as they had to take it. And when they got promoted, people supported that, because this is a person that they saw as being a professional. They saw that this person would be a good leader, that they didn't play games. And if the person had to cross into some disciplinary concern, one of their subordinates, they knew it. The person didn't want to write it, but maybe there was a position where they had to write it, but he wasn't hypocritical, or she wasn't hypocritical. This was a person that, knew the rules and understand the rules. But William, question going right at you is, if you're looking to make a career and you're looking to move up in this profession, you got to set that standard right at the get-go, correct?
Well, I think so. It's like my dad used to say, do as I say, not as I do, right? Well, that doesn't work so well in corrections. And you have to set, and that's the difference. We got a little sidebar chat going about, is it better for new? Is it better for old? You have to set the example. You just because you're a supervisor doesn't mean you're a leader, right? Like Russ said. So if you come in and there are brand new officers that I've been in situations with that are carrying themselves very professionally, very well, and I would take those guys into a situation, take those girls into a situation. I would love, there's people that I work with at the facility that I'm like, man, I would love for you to be my supervisor, because I would do anything that you needed me to do for us to survive this thing. And then there's people that get promoted and you're like, man, first of all, it comes out of left field. You're not even sure how the hell that happened. And then, like you said, they're going to be just as, terrible. If you're screaming, if you're not able to control yourself, if you can't sign your own paperwork, and now you're responsible for other people are going to think that you're a joke. They're not going to, it's going to be the whole respect the position, not the person kind of thing. And half the time correctional officers don't even respect the position if it's a certain type of person. But yeah, you have to kind of set the tone, right? We talk about that with the inmates. So you have to say, this is how I'm going to carry myself in my career. And then you have to set that tone moving forward, so officers know that they can rely on you. And then if you do move up the ranks, then they know, hey, this is a solid person. Whatever they're telling me, it's for a reason. I've got experience with this person. I've seen this person operate, and I know that they're serious about the position.
Hey, this question is going to go out to all three of you guys. So I'll start with Will first, and after Will's done, Russ could jump in, and then Dave can. But a senior officer once told me that you could tell who could be a good supervisor by the way they treat the inmates. What's your thoughts on that, Will? You want to go first?
Well, I think a good supervisor would not bring in heroin for the inmate. So I see, I get that. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the obvious answer, man. Hey, Russ, help me out here, man.
No, hey, I got a real answer. I got a real answer.
That's the right answer.
Okay, listen. The difference between being a supervisor and being frontline, when you're frontline, you're dealing with the inmates. That's your population that you're managing, right? Those are your subordinates, and the way you handle their situations and their problems and the different things that come up kind of foreshadows how you'll handle your employees. I had a buddy of mine, real good friend, who had zero empathy for anybody, right? Like, he's single, he lived by himself, he didn't, only child. So he didn't care about nothing, no kids, no nothing. So if an officer would say, "Oh, my kids," say he didn't care about nothing. Well, when he was getting ready to become a supervisor, I said, someday there's going to be an employee in your office and you're going to have to show some empathy. They're going to be spilling their guts. They're going to be crying. They're going to be wanting you to help them. Like the inmates, when they come to us with a problem, we have to handle it. I said, you're going to have to figure that out. So by watching how they interact and how they deal with those kind of things can kind of show you how they're going to manage, the people that they're watching over, the people that they're responsible for.
Yeah, I like that. And that's actually one of the things that Dave touched on. So, Russ, do you mind if I go to Dave first? Because he talked about empathy. Now, empathy as a supervisor to your subordinates is obviously, I want people to know there's a difference between empathy and sympathy. Empathy is more objective and sympathy is very subjective, which is really rooted in emotion and kind of how inmates try to connect with you and pool that sympathy, however they form that personal bond that they try to do. Obviously, never be sympathetic, be empathetic. But we did mention as a supervisor, right, you want to have some level of empathy for your front line, of course, 100%. Would you say that would be the same for officers to inmates? And how does that transition to the higher level?
Well, of course, when you're talking about the inmate population, you have to show empathy towards them. You can't just go to work with the mindset that everybody that you supervise is evil and they should all die. We can't do that. That's not the department that we live in. So how you treat your population is a direct reflection, I think, of how you're going to treat your subordinates when you're a supervisor. If you have a firm, fair, and consistent mindset when you're dealing with your population, that is naturally going to translate to a firm, fair mindset when you are dealing with your staff. And that's really what you need with them. I don't really, want to go with the firm bit, but sometimes as a supervisor, you got to be. Anybody that's a supervisor already knows that. But yeah, I think it absolutely translates from the population, the way you treat the population as an officer, to how you're going to treat your staff as a supervisor. I think it absolutely translates.
And Russ, I see you nodding your head in agreement. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, the thing in corrections is you get up there at the start of your career and you raise your hand and you swear an oath. And the fact of the matter is that you're compelled by law to carry out your duty. And part of your duty includes, protecting the rights of inmates, right? There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. It's just the same as for any citizen out there on the street. We're supposed to protect all rights. So there's an element of that where inmates, when they approach us, we can't be in that position that we're just going to somehow treat them like dirt, that we're going to treat them as if they're subhuman, because we wouldn't do that to someone on the street. And that may or may not entail actual rights that they have, but we have to look at, what the Constitution says. We have to look at that 8th Amendment. We have to look at that 4th Amendment. We have to look at that 5th Amendment, right? In order to make sure that we're well anchored in what our duties actually are. So I would say, yes, you have to, when someone's looking at the way you treat inmates, you wouldn't do any less for your staff, right? You would make sure that you protected their rights. You would make sure that you helped them out if there was a problem. At the same time, in corrections, for everything there is a season. And there is a time to be tough as nails with an inmate. And there's a time where you're going to have to be tough with some staff too. So, just make sure that you're wearing the right persona to deal with each situation, and be wise about it, be smart about it, and take your duty to heart. And, remember what that duty is, because that's what's going to lead you through an area where otherwise you might make a mistake. You might slip up. You might do something unethical. You might do something illegal. Don't get caught up in that. Think about what you have to do as far as your duty is.
Now, I want to have one more round of questions, which will open a dialogue. I'm actually very familiar with the people that are in my audience right now, so I'm not going to say their name unless they want to volunteer to discuss part of this. I mean, there's nothing controversial here. But the last round of questions, and we'll leave it open if you guys want to have questions after that, is I want to talk about what makes for a bad supervisor that can be discovered at that frontline level. I mean, a lot of people are like, hey, what makes a good supervisor? What do I need to do now to be a good supervisor? And sometimes we need to tell people what you need to stop doing now as a frontline professional. We kind of crossed into that a little bit with, the dealing with the inmate population. So if anybody that is not on the panel wants to discuss or answer that question, if you just go like this, I'll know that you guys want to enter the discussion and I'll call you right in. Okay, cool. So I'll start with David Still. Oh, by the way, guys, big fan of Dave. Dave, not only kind of hangs out in our community, he's a very big participator in what we do. You can tell in every comment he has, the years of experience, the knowledge that he shares. I know him since Correctional Officer Brotherhood. I believe now he's has tagged along with us in the Tier Talk community. Has been a big part of Russ's Keepers of Chaos, and just to have him sitting on the channel with us is a real honor. So it would be great to hear his thoughts on that question. So I just want to hope. I mean, I gave you a lot of good feedback there, but can you unmute yourself? That's the more. Oh, there it is. Okay, go ahead.
I'll tell you exactly what I look for is those guys that like to hide from responsibility. The guys that want to slide by, just do enough just to get by so they don't get yelled at. Now, then suddenly after 10 years, they're just like, I'd like a little bit more pay. I'd like to raise my retirement a little bit. But, then you've already entrenched yourself into what your work habits are. And it's really difficult to train. And those guys that promote like that, from my experience, they have a really hard time working for me.
By the way, I won't give away a specific position, but he's traveled up. So, I mean, he's not just a front line. He's on the administrative level. So we need to listen to that because these are things
I'll tell you right now, I've been a supervisor in corrections for 21 years now. I promoted 2 years in. I started interviewing 6 months. I knew I wasn't going to get it. But, we talk about when you should promote. Well, when you should start thinking about promoting is the day you finish your training and you start the job, because every day from there on out is a job interview, because people are watching you, people are paying attention to you, and that's how you build your reputation, and that's how when you go into the interview panel, that people know who you are.
Right, and I would also like to add that, as a supervisor, you want to cultivate leaders, so make sure that you're empowering your front line to make decisions, but you want to also have a trust, which means that you want to be constructive if they make mistakes. It's not always about writing them up to cover your own ass. Sometimes you have to kind of talk them through it because you want them not to be hesitant. So if you're quick to judge them and quick to write them up, you're just going to have a force that's, afraid to take responsibility. There's just no level of trust there. So if you're a good supervisor, you empower and you employ a level of trust where your employees, if they make a mistake, they come to you. I'm always honored when someone trusts me enough, especially at my position, to tell me that they made a mistake, because they're going to know that if I have to write them, God forbid, but if I do, I'll explain why it had to happen, but it's not my first resource. My first resource is what can we learn about this? So I'm only going to write up the things that you have to write up, but I'll make sure the employee knows why. I don't want to limit that trust I have, because believe it or not, in my position, I know this may sound weird to some people, but I'm honored when an employee trusts me enough to tell me that they made a mistake, because they know I'm going to do my best for them, yes, but I'm also going to try to cultivate them so we don't have that level of mistake happen again. And I think that's an honor. Now, anybody else here want to jump in on that? Okay, good. Hold on. So, Joe, do you know how to unmute yourself? Now, guys, same thing here. I won't give away his title, but he's also on the administrative end of corrections, and he has a lot of experience in the field. He's also been with us in a very big part of our community. He gives so much back. And for those that are new to this profession, he is someone just like Dave, just like Jim, that will go out of their way to help you. Because at the end of the day, I think they know the value of helping somebody when they're new will help out the people that are already in that facility. That's the key. But Joe, what would you like to add?
First and foremost, everybody had a lot of good input, and that I found over the years, I've been a supervisor right about 20 years. I've been in the system 29 years, 8 months, and 16 days. Not that I'm counting, but I've been a lieutenant for 20 of them. And first and foremost, what you have up here on your collar does not make the supervisor. You make what the supervisor is. And one of the questions you asked was, what was one of the things that make for a bad supervisor? And and I've seen it time and time again. And the one is the John Wayne syndrome. They come in running and gunning, don't give a shit about the offender population or the staff. We're here to kick ass and take names. I've seen that get people hurt over the years because of the fact that they don't really have much respect for themselves, let alone empathy for the staff or any kind of empathy for the offender population to keep it, keep the playing field level. As far as my supervision techniques, I found, I guess what you'd call a good butt chewing behind closed doors was always more effective than a formal disciplinary. And I'll be the first one to tell my staff, if something takes place and you have to go to disciplinary, I'll be the one to write it. But when you go before that panel, I'll also be the first one to step forward and speak on your behalf to let them know that this was just a mistake, that you're a solid officer, you're a good officer, you just made a bad choice that day. And I think that's important to know that, if your staff knows that you will help them when you can and discipline them when you have to, but still help them when you can, that goes a long way with the staff.
I like what you said about when you have people are bound to make mistakes. And a mistake in good intent is a lot different than a mistake of someone that's just negligent and just not doing their job. And we have to be able to be aware of that when there has to be a discipline provided. I mean, I don't want to go after an employee who's the best at what they do and treat them as if they're the same as this employee who doesn't do anything, who's just negligent in their ways. So as a supervisor, it really is good. And I like what you said, Lieutenant, is that people that have good intent, they're still going to make mistakes, but there could be good intent behind that mistake. And at the end of the day, do you want to treat that as the same way as you treat somebody who just doesn't give a shit about the job? And I thought that was very powerful. And thank you for bringing it up. Jim, would you like to add something, Jim? There it is. That's my boy. Guys, real quick. Jim, I've learned a lot. He was on a podcast a while back with me where we discussed kind of being he does a lot, guys. He has a lot of roles he plays here. We could talk all day about the stuff that Jim does for the profession, also, to help make sure that we're safe and secured. But he kind of has like a frontline position, but also a higher level position. So it's very tough what he does, but he was able to tell us what it's like to run one of the smaller jails. And there's just so much information that he provided. And again, Jim, thanks for coming on. I know you got a comment here. So what do you got, Jim?
Yeah, I was just going to say, you're asking about flags for people you do not want to hire. Watch out, or not just hire, but move up as supervisor. Watch out for the people that like to stir the shit pot. If they talk shit about other staff and behind, but and they're nice to their face, but as soon as they go back when they meet the water cooler, they're talking shit about the other staff. Man, you do not want them. You don't want them as supervisor. And in all reality, you're best if you can get them out of the damn system altogether, because they're not going to do anything but cause problems. They're going to cause some serious issues between staff. You talk about inmate manipulation and how it can drag a staff member against the rest of the COs. A bad CO that wants to stir the shit pot can destroy a good team in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I agree. We used to call them fire starters. Even if they just, kind of riled up the inmate population as it is. For me as a supervisor, I noticed that one of the best gifts is communication. And that's something you can recognize on the frontline staff professional. It was funny because when we were all peers, you may not realize how important that skill is to de-escalate. But when you become a supervisor and you now become responsible for the behavior of the other people, it's like, I want that person that can communicate now. Like, I should have recognized how good of a skill that was. I mean, that was my thing. I could always communicate. But, as a supervisor, I used to find myself very dependent on, hey, you know this guy, talk to this guy, calm him down. Well, again, you don't want to go right. Guys, I just want to have an easy day. I want to make sure my staff don't get hurt. I want to make sure, believe it or not, the inmate don't get hurt at this point either. So I want to see what we could do to kind of de-escalate it and then be done with it. But before we come to a close, I just want to kind of do one more round. I don't know. I don't want to ask Officer C if he wants to ask anything yet. So I don't know if he has a comment, right? He probably can't comment, right? Okay, not a problem. I understand. Been there. But before we come to a close, I want to know if we can get any final thoughts that we could just give out to someone, just basically our direct answer to the question, what does it take to become a good supervisor? And we'll kind of give our final thoughts. And if it's okay, I'll include Dave, Jim, and Joe on this, but I'll start off with William Young first, and we'll go around the table. So basically, you got someone in front of you, Will, and they're asking you, hey, what does it take for me to become a great supervisor? What would you say?
I would say that the most important thing you can do as a supervisor is to know your team, know the people you're supervising, know their strengths, know their weaknesses, because you will fail as a supervisor, as a leader, if you try to misuse your people. If you're using the enforcers to be your communicators, or you're trying to make a person that doesn't know how to do is it the best person to do a forced cell extraction, and you're having them on the shield, you're gonna fail. So know their strengths, know their weaknesses, and use those to be successful, and don't try to force people to do things that aren't their strengths, because ultimately the team will fail. So the supervisors that I've seen crash and burn, that was their main thing. And the ones that are the most successful are the ones that rely on the strengths of their team and then really know their people.
That's powerful, man, because that's the truth. I mean, I think that's what kind of pulls someone into that leadership position, And I agree with that 100%. If you want the best in your people, you yourself have to be at the best at what you do. Hey, Russ, do you have anything that you want to say?
Yeah, absolutely. Corrections across the country, almost no matter where you are, and there are exceptions to this, is involved in basically, a crisis of, lack of leadership, a crisis of lack of direction. And what we really need at this moment in time is for people to step forward, right? But just having people step forward is not ever going to be enough. We have to have the right people step forward. So if you consider yourself to be one of those people, if you've done your homework, if you've instilled in yourself the right skill sets, the right people sets to carry this thing forward, you should definitely promote. Even if you don't promote, though, what you should do is you should step forward and fulfill a leadership role, because leadership is really what we need. There are people out there right now that are hungry to be taken in the right direction, but it's just as easy sometimes, if those people don't know, for them to be taken in the wrong direction and to be put in a situation where they can not just fail, but they can end up losing their job. They can end up possibly losing their liberty. So we need good leaders to step forward. And it does not matter if that involves putting on some rank or not. So fulfill the position that you're in to the maximum amount that you can. Don't be one that just sits back. And I'm not talking about just doing the minimum. I'm talking about fulfilling every duty that you're legally able to do at that position. Be that person that everyone goes, that is a corrections professional. That is an officer. That is a sergeant. That is a lieutenant that I would follow anywhere.
Yeah, that's powerful, Russ. I see everybody shaking their head and kind of like Russ just brought us to church. San Quentin Church just now. Yeah, and I got Officer C giving us the sign of the cross. I am healed, my brother. I am healed. Hey, hey, Dave, you have anything you want to say? David Smith? first?
About finding the qualities of a good supervisor, I think it all comes back to empathy with your staff, honestly. Learning from the supervisors before you, what they did that you respected, is another great way to go about finding a good supervisor and becoming a good supervisor. To bounce something that was said earlier about, going to the ultimate extreme to not write the disciplinary, we had a supervisor that I worked for that was famous for saying, "I'd rather hurt your feelings than hurt your career." And I think that shows the level of empathy that we need as a good supervisor in our profession.
Yeah, that's powerful too. I mean, what's funny, throughout the dialogue, that was definitely a very important topic, is empathy. Empathy. I think that's something that you should start your career with, and you should end your career with, no matter where the career goes. And that's something actually that I'm glad we brought up, because that wasn't even in my original discussion. But it's great when you talk to experienced people, because it just comes out, because we're talking from experience. That's why we don't need to prepare anything. Hey, Dave Stowe, do you have anything you'd like to say, just in closing, to anybody looking to become a supervisor?
The first thing I say to my sergeants when I get a new one is, don't be afraid to make a mistake. Just make the decision. If someone don't die and someone don't escape, we can fix it. And the other thing is you need to know the difference between constructive criticism and discipline. If you make a mistake and I call you to the side and say, "Hey, you screwed this up," that's not discipline. That's me saying, "Hey, buddy, learn from this mistake. And if you want to ask me, I'll tell you exactly what you need to do to fix it next time."
Yeah, I like that. And that, again, deals with the trusting environment. What's great about that, Dave, if I may add, is that level of trust really does start when you become that frontline supervisor, when you give out that level of trust. But again, you're hoping that if I give it out, am I going to get that same level of trust? So remember this when you're an officer. Remember that when you're just starting this career, whatever it is, before you become that supervisor, that level of trust is so important, because at the end of the day, if your staff can't trust you, then they're going to start hiding their mistakes. And that's when the facility becomes a problem, where people rather hide their mistakes than tell you. An open environment, a trusting environment, is what will ultimately lead to a more safe and secure facility, because if mistakes are made, people aren't going to cover them up. They're going to be honest and tell you, "Hey, gee, I made a mistake," because they know that whatever your actions need to be, their actions will always be in the best interest of the employee, and obviously how that connects to the facility itself, as opposed to what's in the best interest for you. The CYA move. "Oh, you made that mistake. Let me write you up so I can remove myself." You can't do that as a leader. There's no way as a leader you can remove yourself from the actions of your employees. And I like what Officer C says. And I see David Smith shaking his head on that. Put the big rocks first. This is a Florida thing, guys. This is a Florida thing. But guys, if you get a chance, definitely check out those videos that Dave Smith has in a correctional officer lifestyle. I believe he's on video 9 now, because he just did 8, and I was able to watch that today, so I'm all caught up. Hey, we'll go with Joe first. Joe, you have anything you'd like to say in closing to wrap it around?
Yeah, definitely. If you plan on becoming a supervisor, the first and foremost is, don't be afraid to make a mistake, because you're going to. It's going to happen. May not be today, may not be tomorrow. It's going to be next week. It may be next month. Don't be afraid to make a call. Shoot from the hip and stick with it, right or wrong. Be a well-rounded individual. Always treat your staff like you need them, because without them, there is no you. And, be there for them when you can, and be there for them when they can't. And, in closing, really, for the good qualities of a supervisor, you got to be able to take that step ahead of everybody else and be able to lead the charge.
Yeah, that's powerful, man. Leading the charge. I know that's a big thing that everybody's on this channel. I think every time we have a discussion about supervisors and leaders, and I know they're not interchangeable, guys. Sometimes I throw out the word supervisor, but I mean, when we talk about good qualities, that's a leader. But with that said, me, Russ, Will, everybody's been on this channel. When we talk about leaders, it is taking the front, leading by example, and then just, getting out there with your people and making sure that, you present a professional standard that they can look up to. And again, as a leader, you can't cut corners. Hey, Jim, you have anything you want to say?
Yeah, thank you, Anthony. One of the big things, like everybody has said, know your team's strengths, have empathy with your team. Be willing to make mistakes and make your decisions and everything. Another huge thing about knowing your team is remember that everything that affects your team doesn't happen within the walls. A team member can have something happen outside that can do some serious work on them. And as a good supervisor, a good leader, you need to be able to understand that and keep on top of stuff like that. If you've got a staff member that comes in that's not acting the way they normally do, talk to them, take them back, talk to them. And as a really good leader and a good supervisor, get to know your outside, first of all, get to know your facility or your department's resources for what is it called? EAP, Employee Action Assistance Programs. Get to know them and know them well. And if you have a staff member that is having issues, point them in the right direction. If your department doesn't have EAP, know some of the outside resources that are available. You know, counselors and people, friends that are preachers that are willing to talk or willing to help your staff, because the entire staff works not just on the inside but also on the outside.
Yeah, and you know what? Good leaders are aware, because they could see a change in behavior, and then maybe privately they say, "I hope everything's all right." You don't have to tell me what it is if you don't want to, but just sometimes saying, "I hope everything's all right," shows that level of care, because again, you see a shift, which may be subtle, but you must know your people a lot to even see that subtle shift, so people recognize that. You know, real quick, my final thoughts would be is we gave out a lot of good qualities, both negative and positive, that can really kind of help you push forward. But really, you have to know it in yourself. You know, you will recognize when it's time if you listen to everything that's said here. But I want to add something else too, that I think just is important. Really observe your interaction with people as if you're outside of yourself. You know, try to see who you are from someone else's perspective. You know, if that makes any sense, because, you know, how people treat you could be a reflection of how you treat them. So sometimes when, you know, you come around and say, "Man, everybody's an asshole today to me." Well, everybody's an asshole. That means maybe you're the asshole. I'm not, you know, I don't mean to joke around, but it's true. You know, sometimes we don't realize that how we're being treated is probably because how we're treating other people. So having that sense of self and insight is extremely important. Guys, before we come to a close, just want to give some final shout outs to some things that's worth noting. Connie has her book out, The Capers Are Cocoon. We did a great book signing. It was wonderful. She's showing people that you can be something by using the tools and the trades that you've learned in corrections, because that's what it is. And that's a big part of what her book states, that you learned so much in the profession, and she was able to develop that into this business model. And then she's just doing very well. So she documented her story in a way to tell people that this is a great career. And at the end, if you really devote yourself, the tools that you learn from here could be applied in life. I want to, again, also touch on Russ's Keepers of Chaos page. Guys, this is a community that we didn't have when I entered the field in 2002. I'm sure a lot of people here didn't have when they entered the field. This is a community that partners you down with people that are in the shadows that we don't even know exist, professionals that work behind the wall every day, trying to make this world safer. And look what we're doing, guys. We're creating a community where we can talk to people right from the get-go and give them experience, knowledge that will carry with them from the beginning of their career, that's making them good right when they enter, which is ultimately making our facilities safer. Think about that, guys. I mean, the knowledge that we share on these pages in a controlled environment, obviously the groups are controlled, great moderators, by the way, is making our facilities safer, because the people that are coming in with knowledge from people that have walked the walk for 20, 25, 30 years even, you know, and also gives people, like, when they leave the profession, hey, you're not forgotten. We need you. You know, when you get your, you know, go on your road trip for a couple of months, and then when you come back, text me, because you're coming on. I need you. So you're coming on the show, because you don't want that experience to leave. You want to hold on to that, because at the end of the day, guys, I don't care what they teach you in the academy. Nothing beats 25 years of walking the walk and just going through the job every day. It's so much value that, I don't know, people just, they don't realize how valuable that is. Also, Will's got a book. We got The Cage. Different book. When Home Becomes a Housing, which is already out on the market, which has affected so many lives in such a positive way. So there it is. So with William's book is actually, just in short, is saying you're not forgotten. That, you work this profession, you may not think people notice, but people do. At least people in this profession. So at the end of the day, when you feel down the dumps, it's okay. It's okay to say that you're vulnerable. And we need a book like that. A book that says, hey, it's okay to feel the way you do. So read this. And that gives the person the courage to then call somebody. And if they don't know who to call, here's Will. Hey, I gave you that book for a reason. I didn't give you that book to say, read it and be done with it. I gave you a book to say, read it, but here, I'm here. The book is a hand. It's Will's hand, literally saying, if you need help, call me, which he receives. He answers the calls, guys. And also for David Smith, David Smith's on his own time, giving out these little bits of nuggets, just information that we don't even know we need until you hear it. That's what I'm saying. Like, sometimes you may see something on a YouTube channel and may think, oh, I don't need that. Watch the video, because you don't know what comes up during that dialogue. I mean, even here, we sidebar 20 million times. It is what it is. Sure, the topic says this, but you never know where the topic's going to go. And Dave Smith has just this great YouTube channel that, if you just listen to it, the value is not the thumbnail, guys. The value isn't the title of the video. The value is the body of the video, when you actually go in and meet David Smith and see what he has to offer. And then you can just take that with you, in your career. Again, just knowledge that most of us didn't have coming in. And for the 3 people that joined the discussion today, also a gentleman that participated through text, Jim Carpenter, David Still, Lieutenant Joe Pomponio, these are people that have experience, many years in, but they partner that experience with the love for the profession. Do you know how humbling it is for us to be able to do a channel, and for the people that look it up, they want to learn, and we're able to find people that want to teach? Think about that, guys. Just think about how important that is, to have people with this amount of time from different positions, different walks of life, coming in out of their own time to say, I want to talk to you. I want to talk to you. Don't minimize how important that is from the professionals that work behind the wall, who are doing this on their own time. They're not doing this for anybody else but you. This dialogue right now, if you're watching it right now, it's for you. We may not know your name, but you're still family. And right now, what we're trying to do is make sure you know that we care on all levels. So I think that's very notable. As always, guys, the show is Tier Talk. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact. I had to top Russ, guys. Russ came in with some church stuff, and I just had to come in and I had to give something. Russ took the mic from me today. As always, guys, the show is Tier Talk. Please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post the video. Stay safe.